Fly Guys here today, another tutorial. Gonna tie up a Stonefly, a new and improved one. So here I've just started, this is some turkey feather fluff that I've just used to make a small dubbing ball. Right at the back I got two turkey biots, just sort of a dark brown. I'm gonna tie them in roughly about body length, roughly. Just hold in one on each side and then just secure them down. A lot of the first question I get when I show anyone this pattern is, why are you using white thread? Because stoneflies are not white for the most part, and so why are you using white thread? That will become apparent. So as you wrap your biots in there, get them to split nice and evenly, you want to make sure that there is room for this second bead, because you want about 2 eye lengths or an eye and a half length in between the smaller bead and the front bead. So you want to finish a little bit before. We're going to have a lot of material in there right behind the bigger bead, so this looks to be pretty good. So that's how you know when to stop your thread going backwards. So then I'm going to tie in right now some gold wire. So before I do any body stuff, I'm going to tie in some gold wire. Now you can use thin or medium. I choose the thin. So there's the thin. I don't want it to be super bulky. If you want the gold to be more prominent, then use a medium-sized wire. So what you're going to do is you're going to tie it in on the side facing you, the side of the hook that's closest to you, and you're going to tie it right. Just catch it and make sure that it's right in on that bottom side. Alright, and don't go too far, stay right, come right back to the front. Alright, just make sure that it's on the bottom. And what you're going to do is you're going to tie in your vinyl ribbing. So this is medium brown vinyl ribbing. You are going to tie that in. Now there's a rounded side and a flat side to the ribbing. And I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but I think you can right there. So there's a flat side and a rounded side. You want to tie the flat side facing you. Alright, so I found the flat side. I'm also going to tie it in on this side of the hook, but I'm going to tie it in right above the golden wire. Right above it. Alright, so I'm just going to catch it. And then I want this to be above, still on the side, but above the golden wire, and I'll show you what I mean. Here's the gold wire. You see how it's just below where this vinyl is. So you want the vinyl to be tied in just above where the gold ribbing is, but they're both on the same side. That's important. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just start building a body. And right now is a good time to test, okay, where's my beads at? There's going to be more material back here, so it's going to block that bead right about there. So make sure your beads are still in good shape. Okay, so I've made a small taper, not a very big one, but a little one, it's there. And now this is the reason why we use the white thread. You could obviously use yellow thread. I, however, don't have any in this size. This is a 210 Waxed Flymaster Plus. So what I do is take a Sharpie and color the whole body yellow. Alright, this is going to be wrapped with brown vinyl, so it gives kind of an interesting color to it, a very stonefly yellow brownish take. So that's why I enjoy it, and that's why I use it. So once you've colored that in, or again, if you don't want to do that step, just use yellow thread. You will wrap your vinyl, and when you wrap it, when you start wrapping it away from you, the rounded side of the vinyl will show, and it gives it a very buggy look, a nice clean buggy look. So go ahead and wrap this. I'll speed this up for you guys. Alright, so I like to do 7 wraps on my body. Now the reason why we tied this gold wire in on the side is so that it can seamlessly fit. the first wrap seamlessly fits into the vinyl ribbing. And that way it's really, really easy to get the back side going, and it makes the back end look really, really good and clean. And if you've looked at a bunch of stoneflies, you know that they are rather clean insects. They're not super fluffy, and they don't really have a lot of jagged edges or fluffy kind of gilly type stuff. Not as much as, say, a scud or some sort of mayfly that's really sort of less distinguished. So here we are, have our nice body here. You see how it has kind of a unique tint. Now we're going to add in some silly legs, and I like them to go about midway through the tail, about midway to the tail. So we go to the tail, tie them in right where you finished. Alright, so right where you finished that body, you're going to tie them in. I get my hand out of the way so you can see. Boom. So there's my 2 strands. If you're worried about them rolling, you can put a dab of super glue here, which is something that I do quite frequent. I clip the tags, tie it down. Be careful not to build too much thread here. If you build too much thread, then you won't be able to push your bead back at all. Right? See, so we still have a good amount of space there. If my thread base gets any larger up front there, then I'm screwed. So I'll just trim that. So there's my 2 legs, and you can trim them shorter, longer, whatever. But like I said, if you're worried about them spinning, put a drop of UV glue or put a drop of super glue, whatever you want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some gray squirrel. I'm going to put some dubbing on, some wax on my thread here. And this gray squirrel is one that's harvested in the winter. And they have a really thick and longer, almost longer fiber. That gives you a really bushy look. You can't really make it into a noodle, and that's not what I want anyways. I want it to be bushy. So what I'm going to do is take this gray squirrel and loosely dub it onto my thread. Very, very loosely. So here you can see how it's not in really a noodle at all. I'm just sort of loosely putting it on there. I'm going to take hopefully 2 or 3 wraps. I like to pull the legs back and do a couple wraps with this very buggy. So you can substitute if you don't hunt squirrels or you don't have gray squirrel on hand. You can use any sort of dubbing that gives this very buggy look. Once you have this buggy look, it'll kind of pan out after you brush it through, but it's super buggy. Then you're going to whip finish, right? So that's it. If your legs are in place, everything looks good. Whip finish. I just do a couple because this is going to be tied over. Don't need to just go crazy with it. And then I'm just going to push that ball back and just test it out and say, okay, is that enough space? Yeah, that's plenty. So what I like to do to keep that ball in place, just while I'm sort of getting ready, is I'll put a drop of super glue at the very top, just a little drop, and then I'll push that bead back and make sure your legs are all straight and everything. I'll push that bead back and just hold it there for a second, and boom, you're good to go. So now we have a good little chunk of space right there, which is perfect. And I'll go through and clean up any mess that I might have made. There's all this extra fluff here, so I'm just gonna get rid of all that. How's that look? That looks fantastic. So see that little buggy collar? That's all we really want. That's all we're really looking for. So from here, I'm going to keep the same thread. If you're worried about working in tight spaces, if that bothers you, then you can use a thinner thread. You obviously don't need to use this Fly Master Plus. It's rather thick stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put another set of silly legs in which I don't know where my silly leg strand went, so I'll use this one. And these are going to be a little bit shorter, but just put one in on each side. Same deal where, you know, if you're worried about them, these ones tend to slip a little more. So if you're worried about these slipping, then please drop some super glue in on them. So I wrap them all the way back to the bead, right back to the bead, the big one. And I am a little worried about these slipping, so I'm just going to put a teeny drop of super glue there just to keep them in place. It just helps out quite a bit. So, and this is not slipping forward backwards, I'm talking about flipping on this plane where they will spin this way. So from here, once you got your legs set, and you can just, I'm just going to trim it for now. What you're going to do is you are going to make a dubbing loop, and you're going to bring it right back all the way basically to the back of the bead, or the back of where you started here. So work all the way back, and then keep this open. Got my dubbing loop tool here, if I could get it threaded. There we go. And again, I'll put a little bit of wax just for security. And here I have some more dubbing. This is a cinnamon dubbing, and it's very fluffy. It's very light, kind of long, but very light. And so what you're going to do is just toss it into that dubbing loop. And you don't need a whole lot, maybe an inch, maybe a little more than an inch. I like to do 3 clumps, pretty light, but there you go, and see. And I might not use all that, so I'll spin it up here a couple times, get it nice and set. And then I will take a dubbing brush and comb it out. So you see, the more I comb it out, the more fluffy it is. I don't want it to be a huge bulky roll so that it really stacks up. I want the thread that it's sitting in to be pretty much the only thing that I'm wrapping. So I really go through and make sure this is nice and picked out. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, make sure you move your thread to the very front. Now what I'm going to do is just wrap this, working it backwards. You don't worry too much about the legs, you can take care of those after. If they get trapped in some fibers or something, don't worry too much about it. So I usually like to, ooh, good thing I was holding on to it, do 3 wraps here. I guess I'll do 4 wraps. Always hold. And make sure that you're not trapping any fibers, because you don't want to build a bulky head. So I just kind of trap it once, twice, and then I'll work my legs out. This is a very fluffy pattern towards the front, but when in the water it takes on a nice sleek look, especially when it gets wet. Turns into this nice sort of sleek pattern. So now what I'm going to do is work backwards just a few, just a teeny tiny bit, not a whole lot, and that is because I am going to wrap in this partridge feather here. So here's a partridge feather, and this really should be 1-2 wraps max. You really don't want a lot. This is just sort of an accent. Make sure they're the correct length. Here these are about half the body where they're going to wrap into, half the body or so, and that's fine. You can obviously go short or you can go long. I prefer to go longer than shorter sometimes. It doesn't really matter because this is just such an accent piece. It's not really a huge important detail. In fact, I often leave it out because it's such a pain, because these friggin' partridge feathers are such a pain to work with. So I'm just going to palmer it backwards and then start wrapping forward. And like I said, you really only want 2 wraps. If you have a spin function on your vise, now would be the time to use it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to work them back, tie over them, make sure I got it. You want a little collar to happen. Alright, you don't want to go over the bead, but you do want a little collar to happen. Kind of a scarring. If you've looked at any stoneflies, you'll see they have a good amount of scarring on them, and we are going to turn it yellow and make it into scarring. So here's a little bit of thin skin, and I drop a little thin skin right on top, and I work it so that these points here are past the last bead. So I work it back, that's how long I want it to be, and I usually only catch it once. And then you have this big tab here, and I'll fold it back. I'll fold it back over, so it'll be something like that. And it'll look like the multiple sheaths that a real stonefly has. You can cut it in any pattern that you want, doesn't matter to me. So let's see, how are we looking? Let's get that leg out of there. We're looking pretty good. This is a super buggy pattern, so if you're into bugs, if you like throwing buggy patterns, this is a pattern for you. As you fish it, a lot of the fur that's loose will come out, so it'll get less bushy as you fish it. So once that is all set, we have our sheath on top. There's our buggy stonefly. What I'm going to do is color the thread yellow again, just to create that scarring, that golden stone scarring that you may or may not have seen. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you look for it because it's super cool. And I'm going to whip finish, making this collar yellow. And you can go around and see, did you miss any spots? Flip your fly around and say, okay, I missed a spot here. You can just touch it up with the yellow. No big deal. And boom, there we go. So now one final detail is I'll take some Raid Zap. A friend, NW Fly Co., Nate Wright, if you haven't checked him out, please do. He's a fantastic fly tyer. He's kind of got me onto Raid Zap, and it is fantastic. So what I'll do is I'll just put a drop here right on top. So that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Here's our buggy stonefly. Super effective, especially in really fast water. If you or someone you know wants one, hit us up, DM us on Instagram. We can get an order going for you. Or if you have any questions about how to make the pattern, we can answer those too. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and check us out on Instagram for more fishy content. And we hope to see you next time.